Hello and a warm welcome back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, a podcast covering all things travel. Charlie Bosco, joined as ever by my good friend TT. And T, just before we came on air, we were discussing the fact that surprisingly Donald Trump and Elon Musk have fallen out. The sky is blue. And it feels like a pretty good day all round.
It does. I'm having some Earl Grey tea to celebrate your Englishness, and yeah, it's good. And whenever two egomaniac clowns start battling, it. And I posted on Instagram. It'd be a lot funnier if it was in America.
Yeah, I know, but we've got this far. We might as well keep going.
That's true. Yeah, let's see where the circus ends.
Which egomaniac clown out of us two wins the Opposites Abroad power struggle? But
probably you, because I'm not very competitive.
No, I'm the least competitive person ever. I just don't care.
Yeah, I'm so terrible to play like board games with, because I just don't care if I win. I don't really see how it affects my day at all, and I just start like drinking and not paying attention, and the person next to me starts playing my pieces for me.
I'm pretty similar. Yeah, I just don't care. As long as I get to enjoy my life, then you can win all you like. That's fine. I don't care. All right, well, it sounds like it's not going to be a very good power struggle. It's not going to be a Trump-Musk type thing.
No, I don't think so. I think I would work through any of our huge egos.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like both our egos are just about in check. But we've got a fun show today. We were kind of throwing around ideas for what we could talk about, and you had the idea of travel horror shows, worst flight, worst border crossing, worst driving experience. Because I think obviously we're positive about travel. We love it. It's what our passion is. It's why we make this podcast. But doesn't mean it always goes smoothly. So I think I know some of your stories, but I definitely feel like there's a few I'm looking forward to hearing, and there's a few of these questions where I don't know what your answer's going to be.
Yeah, and I think even the terrible things that happen, you try to take away that I learned a big lesson from it, instead of just woe is me, that was so awful. And it's like, okay, I'm not doing that again, because it was just a disaster.
Yeah, and I think the bad stuff is generally what you remember. If I look back, say, on my career ski mountaineering, I can't really remember one sunrise from another. They were all amazing at the time, but I can definitely remember sitting and being cold for the night, and the time I dropped something or something terrible happened. I mean, as long as it's not really terrible, but being a bit cold and uncomfortable or something bad happening, actually, after a while, in some cases about a decade, you can look back on that and smile, and actually it makes a good story. So bad things happening when you're traveling sucks at the time, but I think, like you say, on balance, it's actually not a bad thing.
Yeah, and some of the times when I've come back and I'm telling people at work or my friends a story about travel, if I'm like, oh yeah, I went to the beach and it was so beautiful, I was sitting there, they're like, whatever. But I'm like, oh my god, like I got so sick and I didn't pack right and stuff. Then they're all like hanging on my every word. Like it's a weird human thing where we like listening to people's misery.
So you don't have an ego, and you're not competitive, but you do want everyone hanging on your every word, like Trump.
I would say I'm not competitive, but I would say I have an ego.
I think everyone's got an ego.
Yeah, and I think my ego makes me not competitive in a way, if that makes sense.
You just have effortless superiority over everyone else.
Yeah. It's like, what does it matter? I already know that I am who I am.
I feel like the world would have been spared a lot of trauma if Donald Trump just had that level of self-confidence and wasn't constantly trying to prove something to his dad, but hey-ho.
Yeah, I know. Even though if he just put his money in the stock market, he'd have way more money than if he'd done all the stuff he did with it. But
yeah,
world's greatest businessman.
Yeah, I know. I think Bernie Sanders had it right. I remember on Trump's first run, someone stood up and said, we need a businessman running America. America is capitalist. We need a businessman. And Bernie Sanders said, this is a guy who inherited $300 million from his dad, bought a plane, and wrote his name on the side in gold. I promise he doesn't care about you, and he's not very good at business.
Yeah, yes.
But anyway, we digress. I mean, we could certainly kill a lot.
Sorry, we're kind of gleeful. It's a gleeful day.
Yeah, I know. We could talk a lot about things that are slightly strange about Donald Trump's psychology. That would certainly be a pretty long episode. But yeah, we wanted to talk about worst things that have ever happened. Whether our listeners agree, I think you and I would be of the same opinion on worst US president of all time. So let's just stick on the travel front. In no particular order, what is the roughest night you've had when traveling? That's what we're going to go for first.
Okay, you go.
I have to go. I don't think this counts as travel experience, but in my climbing career, I've had 4 nights where we were climbing a big face or a big mountain, and we got caught out, and we didn't manage to get off the mountain that day, and had to had to sit on a ledge or something, and with no spare clothes, no gear, no nothing, and just sit there all night until the sun came up. So even when I think about rough nights, curled up underneath a bench, I had a curled up underneath a bench in Abu Dhabi airport once, and stayed in a pod hotel in Moscow airport, and there were rowdy Russians getting drunk a meter away. And obviously, again, I use the word sleep. I spent the night in this pod, so those things seem quite rough, but versus shivering away on a ledge on a mountain, they don't seem too bad at all. So I would say mine, although it's perhaps not travel, I just don't feel anything can really compare to being that cold and scared for that period of time.
Yeah, I am at the age now and this level of success in my life. I'm not sleeping at airports.
Uh,
And like, I'm over it. It's just sucks.
yeah, no, I'm the same, but have you had any rough nights down the years?
Yes. So the one that I would think, I was actually just telling my buddy this story the other day, because he was asking me about when I went to El Salvador, and so this is when I wasn't quite as successful. So I was trying to cut costs on things, and I booked a flight to El Salvador. Now, when you book flights from the United States into Central America, they're usually horrible flights, and I've heard a lot of that is because that a lot of the flights, they make their money from locals coming back to the U.S. to visit family, or people, that more than they make money from the people from the U.S. going to like visit. So they want the plane there to like leave at like 7 a.m. to go back to the U.S. So it ends up landing at like 4 a.m, and they're horrible flights. So I flew to El Salvador. I had a horrible flight, and I landed like 4 a.m, and I thought, okay, and actually looking back, I don't even think it was that late. I think it was like 2 or 3, but it was in the middle, like the mid morning or mid early morning. So I thought, well, I'll just sleep in the airport, and then I'll about 8 o'clock or something, I'll take the bus to my hotel, and I'll save a night of hotel because I don't really want to spend a bunch of money just for a few hours. I just thought that was stupid. So I land, and I walk out into the terminal, and I go to baggage claim, and I go kind of through baggage claim, and there's a bunch of seats and stuff at the airport. Well, I sit down at a seat, and I literally like kind of slump down a little bit and close my eyes, and within 30 seconds, someone's kicking my feet, and I open my eye, and there's somebody that works there with a machine gun, like not pointing it at me, but holding it and saying, "You can't sleep here. You can't sleep in the airport." And I'm like, "Oh crap, what do I do?" And the buses didn't run until like 8 a.m. And this is before Uber, so I was kind of like stuck there. And there's probably cabs, but I don't even know where I would have gone. So I end up going outside, and it's like 1,000,000 degrees, and there's bugs, and it's super muggy. And I end up, and I'm exhausted because I couldn't sleep on the flight, and I end up laying on a park bench like outside the airport, and I've got my arm looped through my bag so no one like grab my bag and run off with it, and I try to sleep for a few hours until the buses start running, and it was just like the most miserable, uncomfortable, stupid experience ever. And at the end I thought, I am never ever doing this again. Like I will book a hotel, or I will not fly in the middle of the night. And it's one of those things when you're sitting at your desk at work, you're sitting at home and you're watching a movie and you've got your tea or your beer or whatever, and you're thinking about doing something. It seems very easy to be like, oh yeah, I can suck that up. That's no big deal. That'll be fine. But when you're actually there, you're like, this really isn't the way I pictured it in the comfort of my own home. So that's my. I'm sure I have more terrible nights. Maybe we should do like a Halloween episode where we do more. But that was definitely one of the worst that I learned a really big lesson from.
We've actually got on the list now worst flight. I guess if he's still alive, you probably haven't had a really bad flight, unless you're really lucky / unlucky and you were in a plane that went down and you survived.
Well, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first? Why don't you go first, since I rambled on with my story forever?
No, it's fine. I actually I was thinking about this and I thought, I haven't had any bad flights. Had one or two sketchy, been in helicopters and been pretty glad to get down on the ground, but that's kind of the nature of flying a helicopter in the mountains. But I was flying from Munich to Oslo, and we got, I'm going to say, 10 minutes into the flight, and there was a big bang, and the plane decelerated so fast I had to put my hand on the seat in front of me, and you could also feel it beginning to sink immediately, and there was no doubt that the plane was slowing down and going and descending instantly following this bang. And obviously it is animal terror, because you just assume something awful's happened. And people started screaming, and a few kind of bags went sliding around, and the air hostess and they all jumped up and started trying to calm people down. And after you still could tell that we were kind of descending, but it was kind of clear that the plane wasn't going to fall out the sky immediately. And it banked to the left 90 degrees, then another bank to the left 90 degrees. And about 5 minutes later, I could hear people going, wonder what that was. Oh, well, guess we're back on course. And I was thinking, we just turned left twice. Like, we're going back. Whatever it is, we're not carrying on. What do you think is happening here? And it turned out it had been a bird strike, and they lost one of the engines.
Wow.
And when we got down, we got the blue light escort, the fire were waiting, and we ended up being able to taxi back to the terminal, but the captain came out and spoke to us, and he said, that's never happened to me in my flying career. We can land on one engine, but you can't take off, so we were lucky it happened when we had some altitude to play with.
Yeah, yeah.
But he looked like he'd been flying a while, and he said it was a first. So that was kind of interesting. And then when we got off, you could see the engine was just mangled. It was just blown apart, so...
that's
pretty
cool.
Scary, but at the time,
Yeah.
It's amazing how scary and how vulnerable you feel. You know what it's like? You're sitting there in this metal tube, 15,000 feet up, and you think, there is nothing I can do. There's no heroics here. There's no movie hero moment here. We either just crash into the ground and explode on impact, or we don't. And there's just nothing I can do to affect that. But yeah, it's a terrifying moment, I gotta say.
Well, that makes mine seem really stupid.
What was yours? Your TV wasn't working in business class or
yes.
something?
Basically. So, I mean, I've got other ones. I have some turbulence and canceled flights and medical emergencies and I always wonder what it would happen when they're like, is there a doctor? And then someone comes up and they're like, go help, and it's like, yeah, this person had a heart attack, and they're like, well, I'm a doctor of economics. Like, you should have specified over the thing what you actually what you actually wanted. Like, I'm a podiatrist. Like, is it a foot emergency? So yeah, mine is so totally stupid compared to that. My worst one was when I was going to go meet you for the first time. I flew on United to China. And it was one of the last flights ever for a 747 when they were in service, and which I didn't know when I booked it. And I got on the plane, and at first I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's a 747. Until I sat down and realized that it was like not modern at all. There was no way to charge your phone. There's no computer screens, or there's no TV screens. There was no nothing. And I had just stupidly assumed that there'd be movies, so I didn't bring a book. I hadn't downloaded anything on my phone, and it was like a 14-hour flight, and it was miserable.
What do
And
you actually? Firstly, there are 747s still flying, but I know some of them have retired. But
yeah, I don't know that there's really any more flying. I would have to Google that
BA
with
is
the major
still flying
characters.
theirs, but I know that
Yeah,
some
but
of the older
they
ones
still have
were
like
out,
Spitfires and stuff.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Hurricanes, actually. Spitfires,
Yeah.
Hurricanes. But what did you actually do? Because, I mean, I find flying incredibly boring when I've got a movie to watch. I mean, what does one do?
I think I just drank a lot
Yeah.
because it was an international flight. But yeah, it was miserable. And all my stories, I have like a lesson. And my lesson from that, that I started doing after that, I always have a book with me when I travel, just in case all the electronics go off and there's nothing to that you can watch. I generally have a I don't always, but I try to bring like a portable charger so I could charge my phone if I'm on it. And then the other thing I do is I always download movies on like Netflix and have movies ready to go just in case. But a real one is I have the book, or sometimes I bring a little notebook and I can write in it if I want to, write my thoughts, or I'm working on writing a book and I can take some notes in that. But just sitting there, I don't know how people did those old flights. I mean, I guess you'd sit and smoke cigarettes and.
Well, people just read, didn't they? The lost art of reading.
Or
a
they'd
book.
read, yeah. And I think it's cool anymore. If when I see someone reading a book on a plane, I'm kind of like right on.
Yeah.
Because you just don't really see it very often. Some old people, but you very rarely see anyone who's younger reading a book on a plane. I just think it's so cool. It's such an elegant way to fly.
What do you make of this trend called raw dogging, where you don't do anything or listen to anything, you just look straight ahead? Or
I think it's stupid, unbelievably stupid. Some of these trends that people want to like put on like social media just to brag about, like that's so dumb. And then some of the raw dogs, they try to go the whole time without going to the bathroom.
well, what's the
Like,
point
why
in
would
that?
you do that? That's because they're basically like, I sat on the plane for 15 hours. I didn't have anything to eat or drink. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't watch anything. I didn't read anything. Like somehow that's like a badge of courage. That to me, that's just like, you're an idiot.
I agree, because one of the great pleasures when you've got a busy life, one of the great pleasures of a long haul flight, if you could ever call it a pleasure, but one of the positives is you've got nothing to think about. You can just guilt free put a movie on, not be thinking I need to do this household chore or reply to this email or do this. I can just sit guilt free with a bottle of wine watching a movie. That's great.
Well, and one of the things I try to do on planes is I tend to like classic movies, either that I've seen or haven't seen, because our lives are so busy. When I'm watching a movie at home, half the time I'm checking my phone. There's other stuff going around. My animals are running around or whatever it is, and I'm only half paying attention. And to watch like a classic Hitchcock movie or The Maltese Falcon or something, and you're really watching it because there's no distractions on a plane, I think is awesome.
Agreed. All right.
So yeah, so that one sucked for me, but that doesn't really. I don't know. It's a stupid one compared to yours, which is way scarier.
You had a default raw dog, I think it's. Yeah.
I think, and those people that raw dog, do you think they go home after work and they just sit in a chair and stare into space all night in their house? Like, this is stupid.
I'm not actually convinced many people do it. I think they just take a picture of themselves.
If I sat by someone that next to me and they were doing that, I'd tell them that they're stupid.
Yeah, I agree. Just another reason why we need a private jet. The next one we've got is border crossing. You had any bad border crossings? I mean, they generally happen over land.
Yes, I've had one. I've actually had a couple, and one that was very uncomfortable was I was going from.
Hold on, this is a border crossing that got uncomfortable. Is this going to be suitable for a PG audience? What did they do to you?
Not as much as I wanted them to.
Just the first knuckle.
Yes. I was really hoping for more, but so I've got two stories. One is I was going from Poland to the Ukraine on a train, And when it stopped in at the border, the Ukrainian police or military got on, and I was in a bunk bed, and I was in the top bunk bed. Um, my buddy was in the middle bunk bed, and then there was a Ukrainian guy in the bottom bunk bed. And they came in and they were checking all the cabins, checking passports. So they came in and they realized that my buddy and I were American, and they started asking us, how much money do you have? Like, really starting questioning us, taking our passports. And I wasn't very well traveled. This was probably, well, obviously it's not recent because it's Ukraine, but this is probably 12 years ago or so. And I was actually really getting worried they were going to like shake us down for money and go through our stuff. And what happened was the guy that was asleep on the bottom bunk finally like sat up and like chewed him out in Ukrainian. And I think he told him to like leave us alone. And they gave us our stuff back and left. But I think if he hadn't been there, it could have gone a lot,
Yeah.
a lot worse.
It's amazing how vulnerable you feel all of a sudden.
Yes, it is. And really what you say is, no, I don't have any money. You know, or you have a few dollars in your pocket. No, I use credit cards. I'm going to get money at the ATM when I get there. I just have a few dollars in my pocket. You never like, oh yeah, I've got this big wad of cash. You know, here, look at it. Like, and then, you know, I like nice things, as you know, and I usually wear a nice watch and stuff. And if I was somewhere like that, I would be very careful with what I had. So another lesson, I would say. Do you want me to go to the second one, or do you want to do one and then I'll do mine?
My one's pretty. It's not pretty minor. I actually was with someone who was refused entry to the UK at the ferry port in Calais, which is quite a weird thing. Got to the border, they asked us some questions, didn't like the answers, and then said, we're going to deny you entry. And I was just thinking, oh, come on, we're going to miss the ferry. Can you just hurry this along? What do we need to sign? And then the woman goes, no, you don't understand. You won't be going on this ferry or any others. She's been denied entry to the UK. So that was kind of inconvenient, but that was that was about as bad as it got. I can remember my happiest border crossing was when we went from North Korea into China, because I remember feeling like this weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But no, it's generally done pretty well with border crossings. What's your other one?
My other one is pretty recent. I was in Serbia for a week, and I decided to take a day trip into Bosnia. And I was just like, I'm going to go to a random little town in Bosnia and walk around for the day. So I get on a bus and I go, and when I go to the border of Bosnia, I've got to show my passport to like the Bosnian police or whatever they are, the immigration police, and everyone else is just getting ushered through. As soon as they see I'm American, they pull a guy out of a back office and take me into a little tiny room to start interrogating me.
Oh.
And they go through. The guy goes through like every inch of my luggage, and I didn't have luggage, but I had a backpack. And what had happened was I had just taken like my normal travel backpack and put some stuff in it for the day, and I didn't really look through it, so I had like loose Tylenol pills and stuff in it because I really hadn't thought about it. Another lesson learned: I wouldn't do that. If I was going to a border crossing, I would have everything cleaned out and really look at it, but I didn't. Never occurred to me they would even look through my bag. And so he's taking each individual pill. What's this? What's going on? You know, asking me a million questions, and I won't say for the sake of privacy how I finally got him to leave me alone, but I explained something to him, and he was kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that, and took me out of there. And then at that point, it's like a weird story. At that point, the buses was through the thing. The bus had left. Well, he had called and told him to stop the bus on the other side of like the barriers, like the Berlin Wall or whatever it was, like on the other way, and wait for me. So it's like 20-30 minutes later, and I'm the only like non-Bosnian Serbian person on this big bus. Like everyone's like going to work, or they're going to go visit grandma or whatever, and I'm like the only like idiot American on this thing. So the bus like sitting there for like 30 minutes because he had called, I think, when he realized kind of what was going on with me, that I wasn't a problem. So then he walks me outside and he goes, "Oh, your bus is already on the other side." And I'm like, "Okay." I go, "Well, should I walk over there?" He's like, "No, it's too far." And I'm like, "Well, can you drive me there?" He's like, "No, we don't really have a car." So he just stops a car that's going through the border and tells this like couple, like, "Hey, take this guy to the bus on the other side of the wall." and they're just like these like either Serbian or Bosnian couple, and they're basically like looked at me like, "We don't want this guy in our car," like, but they did it because he's like basically like threatening them, and they take me to the bus, and I get to the bus, and I get on the bus, and I have never had so many people in my life glaring at me like they wanted to kill me as this entire bus of people who generally aren't known for being super cheery in the first place from those countries just mean mugging me like they wanted to kill me because I had held them up for half an hour, and they were blaming me like somehow I'm an idiot and I like didn't have my stuff, and it's my fault that they got delayed and now they're gonna miss whatever they're gonna miss. And I had to walk like, and then I had to walk like down the aisle while they're all just glaring at me, and I'm like, "Sorry, sorry, sorry, sorry."
Not even able to speak their language to explain.
No, and then it was still like pretty far to the town. It's not like right there, and I had to ride to the town. It was horrible. And then I was so paranoid on the way back that something else was gonna happen, but on the way back, nothing happened. But it's like you said, like you're in this little interrogation room with a guy, and you're like, man, this guy could just take my passport, and he could just throw it out the window, and he could do whatever he wants to me, and I have no recourse.
Yeah, it's quite scary because in the back of your mind, in most countries, you've got the US diplomacy network to come and help you, but in that moment, they could just choose to make life pretty hard for you.
Well, I wouldn't even trust the U.S. diplomacy network anymore, too. I think they've been so decimated with budget cuts, and everybody hates us now. I'd be way more concerned now than I was then.
Yeah, true. I always get nervous crossing borders. I don't know about you. I don't like it. Even crossing into the US, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It just feels fraught with problems.
Yeah, I don't like it either. And a lot of the people in my experience that are kind of like border guards, they're like big fish in little ponds. Yeah. So they're just jerks. Like they've got, this is their only power in their life, and you're held hostage, and they're just jerks. Like they're not like, "Welcome to, we're so happy to have you in our country and spend money."
No, I know. 2 weeks ago, I crossed into the US to go skiing on Washington Pass, and we got to the border, and the woman ran through all the things we could have, and she said, "Do you have any firewood?" And I said, "Yeah," because I chainsawed a load of wood so that when we had a fire at night, I'd have a head start with dry wood. And she goes, "In that case, we're going to deny you entry to the United States." I said, "Well, can't I just leave the firewood?" And she goes, "No, you can't bring the firewood into the United States because there might be bugs in it." And I looked across from the border we were at, and it's just forest everywhere, except for this little strip of road. So whatever these bugs were that she was so worried about, the forest just crossed the border, and there's 5,000 kilometers of border, most of it's fields and forest. The idea that the bugs can't cross the border. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, because that's the longest border in the world, I think,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's the longest land border in the world. But anyway, so she made us drive back around, got there, and the Canadian guy goes, "Firewood?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, for God's sake." And just took our firewood off us and just said, "Look, just come and grab it on your way back in a few days. There's no problem." Swing back round to the woman, and I said, "Hey, us again." And she goes, "Who's us again? You're trying to enter the United States." And we had to begin the entire interview process all over again. And I started kind of not laughing at her, but smirking. And she actually said, "Is there something amusing, sir?" And I just had to put on a straight face and just do my very best. But yeah, there seems to be a huge element of power tripping going on. It's I don't know. Who knows? They certainly seem like people that like to have a bit of power. But moving on to our next topic, illnesses. You had any good illnesses traveling? Good food poisoning?
No, but I've had lots of bad ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few. I actually have like three It's funny because I traveled a lot as a kid, and then I didn't travel for a long time. And that Ukraine trip was one of the first ones that I really went on like a big international trip as an adult. And I have three like horror stories from that trip, and somehow I came out of that trip with this like new desire to travel the world. So it's funny how that happens. But I actually got sick on that trip at the end, and was really sick on the plane on the way home. I remember when I got home, I was so weak that I had to crawl up the stairs. I had a 2-story house at the time. I had to crawl up the stairs, and I laid in bed, and I woke up 12 hours later. Probably the sickest I've ever been is in Fiji. I was at a resort, and I was drinking the water at the resort, which they said was like filtered and rainwater and clean, and I got unbelievably sick, and like like half the trip I was just incredibly sick in my room. I don't want to go into too many details because I try to stay mysterious in a good way. But it was awful, awful, awful. I think all this stuff you learn lessons from. Like now, I won't drink tap water unless I'm in someplace I'm really, really sure about it. I will drink bottled water or beer. I won't drink ice, and I won't order cocktails with ice. I won't eat salads or something with raw vegetables that could have been washed. I want things cooked or fried. It's not like the healthiest thing in the world, but I can always be healthy some other time. I want things cooked vegetables, cooked meat, fried things, beer, bottled water, and I've been pretty lucky following that since then.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. It's so easy to get sick.
It is, and I always travel with Imodium. I always have it in my bag, and it'll clog you up. And if you do get sick and you're getting on a plane or you've got a long bus ride or something, you pound some Imodium. It clogs you up until you get to where you're supposed to go, and you're not having an emergency. I mean, nothing's worse than being on the plane and you're like have to get up and keep going to the bathroom constantly, or you're worried you're gonna, if you fall asleep, you're gonna have an accident. Like that is no fun.
No, it's a brutal thing.
What about you?
I got Giardia in Nepal, which is an intestinal infection. It's a parasitic thing, apparently. I was leading an expedition. We were out for 26 days, I want to say, hiking, mountaineering in Nepal. Got back to Namche Bazaar, which is the Sherpa capital of the Khumbu region, and we had a really big night out. Just an awesome night out. I actually remember one of the clients was a real straight guy, but you could kind of tell that he could cut loose. And I just have this vague memory of watching the sunrise from the helipad in Namche Bazaar, smoking a joint, don't know where we got it, who knows, with this guy who was super straight, and as far as I was concerned, he barely drank. I'm pretty sure he'd never smoked a joint in his life. And the sun coming up, and the next morning, afternoon, whenever, I woke up, and I remember thinking, I'm for sure getting fired. I was out with that really straight guy. It must have been my idea to smoke a joint. This is terrible. I felt awful. I saw him, and he just smiled and said, well, that escalated quickly. And it was never mentioned again. But obviously I had this awful hangover, and I thought, God, this hangover is killing me. And I carried on. We hiked out from Namche Bazaar to Lukla, where we ended up flying back to Kathmandu. And the whole walk out, I was thinking, God, I feel really ropey. That hangover killed me. What the hell were we drinking? And we got back to Kathmandu. By now, it's 2-3 days after this legendary drinking session, and I just wasn't feeling any better. And I was in Kathmandu about a week, I think, and got checked out, and it turned out I had Giardia, and the guy said, yeah, you got Giardia, you're going to be floored, stomach cramps, nausea, watery diarrhea. It's a savage thing. You get massive weight loss. But I was booked to lead a trekking trip, another trekking trip. I had a week off in Kathmandu, then I was working again, and I had to lead a 3-week trekking trip around the Everest region, including going to Everest Base Camp with Giardia. And I just didn't tell the clients. I just kept quiet, and I just put on the bravest face I had, and we'd get into camp at, I don't know, 2, 3 in the afternoon. I would just pass out drooling in my tent until 6 p.m. Wake up, pretend to be really happy at dinner, and then just collapse back into the tent. And it was heinous. And
that sounds horrible.
I ended up less than 125 pounds. So my fighting weight's probably about 160. So I've got pictures of me, and you can kind of see my ribs protruding and my elbows sticking out from the weight loss. So yeah, Giardia was awful. It's not acute sickness. I mean, I've had food poisoning and bugs where there's no way I could have trekked to Everest Base Camp. They're just too brutal. But it's like a 6 out of 10 sickness, except it's 24 hours a day. And it went on for, I'm going to say, a month. So yeah, I would say Giardia was pretty bad. And then yeah, a couple of food poisonings. But when you got food poisoning, as awful as it is, deep down you kind of know it's going to end in that, a day, maybe 2. Whereas with this Giardia, I was thinking a couple of days in, could feel myself losing weight. I was constantly dropping off the back of the group we were trekking with and going for explosive diarrhea in the woods and just thinking, what am I going to do? But yeah, managed to get through it, which was crazy really, because I wasn't getting very well paid, but hey, I said I'd do it, so I had to.
That sound. And what do you think you got it from?
It could be anything. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's one thing when you're actually out in the mountains, because although your personal hygiene is terrible, you're not showering and you're probably not washing properly, there's not that much up there. There's nothing really living. You get above 15,000 feet, 5,000 meters, nothing really lives up there. It's a dead place. So I'm pretty sure, well, we were down in Namche Bazaar, we were drinking out of glasses and God knows how they'd been washed, and we're in dirty bars, and it could have been there. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the night we went out and got hammered.
Well, and that's another thing. If I'm at a bar, I drink out of the bottle.
Yeah, I cannot. My memory fails me on what exactly happened that night. So
yeah, and I can totally understand that. But yeah, I think there's lessons from that too. I mean, now I'll drink out of a pint glass if I'm in England, of course. But if I'm in some place where I don't trust the hygiene, and they bring me a beer with a glass, I drink it out of the bottle.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, my behaviour was not that of a responsible adult that night, though. So I'm pretty sure I contracted it there.
Well, and you could have been so out of it, you just stuck your head under the sink and just guzzled a bunch of water before bed or something. Who knows?
Anything could have happened. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just the month after wasn't a lot of fun. And the last topic we've got is kind of packing or lost stuff. You ever lost anything bad? Lost a passport? You've lost a passport, haven't you?
In the Ukraine. Yes, I lost a passport in the Ukraine, and it was the most horrible experience, one of the most horrible experiences ever. This was when I wasn't very well traveled, so I thought, well, you're supposed to wear like a money belt when you travel, like that's what you do. And I had like a money belt tucked in my pants, and I had my cash in it, and I had my passport in it, and I either neglected to zip it up, or I got something out to buy something or something and didn't zip it up. And when I went walking most of the day around this little town called Lviv in Ukraine, and when I got back to the hotel, I went to take it off and it was empty and all my stuff was gone. And it had fallen out somehow when I was walking around, and nobody bothered to tell me. And it was all my cash that I had for the trip and my passport. And it was terrible. Now I keep a picture of my passport at my phone. I have one in my email. Back then I think I had a BlackBerry, so I didn't have that. And what people don't realize is you have to get to an embassy, and which is a nightmare because I wasn't in the capital.
Yeah. So you can go to a consulate as well, but there's not that many. It's still going to be a major city.
Yes. And there wasn't one where I was. Fortunately, we were going to Kiev. So anyway, and I didn't need a passport to get there because I was already in the country. But we went to Kiev, went to I guess it was an embassy. I don't remember, but I think it was an embassy. And I get there, and it's after hours, and by like 15 minutes, and the guy, I press a button, and the guy's like, "We're closed. Come back tomorrow." And I'm like, "I can't come back tomorrow. Like, I had like flight." And he's like, "I'm sorry, too bad." And I had to have a conversation over the thing, kind of like I did with that guy the in Bosnia, and he then let me in and gave me a temporary passport, which I had to pay cash for, $200 cash for,
Oh.
which I luckily had. I luckily had a little bit of extra cash that I had in a different part of my bag. So I had to pay $200 cash, and then he questioned me forever about like, where did your parents meet? Where did blah 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 blah? You know, just a million questions because he's trying to determine if I'm really lost my passport and I'm really American, or if I'm just, I've got a great American accent because I'm trying to get out of the country, or who knows what? Who knows who I am? Give me a temporary passport, and then tells me, "Oh, you're gonna have trouble getting out of the country because you don't have a stamp to get it where you got into the country. So you need to go to the police station and get a police report to bring with you to the airport." So I'm like, what a giant mess. So I meet a guy. I've got my buddy with me who's very well traveled, but he just decided he just wasn't going to help me. So he just goes sightseeing or something. And I meet a guy, and I'm at breakfast, and I'm like, "Where's the police station?" Like, I ask a guy there, and there's a young guy there. And funny enough, his job was he was a sausage salesman.
Is
and yeah, it's a real thing. So he would go around to like different stores and like try to get him to buy sausage, like if he worked for some sausage company. So he was actually like, "You know what? I'll take you to the police station and help you get that report." And which took like a couple hours. It was like the nicest thing that he did when he had other things to do. So we drove in his car and we went to the police station, and he's like, you're gonna have to bribe them. You're gonna have to give them money to get a report. They're not gonna do it. So I'm like, "What do I do? How much do I give?" And he's like, "Well, how much you got?" And it ended up being maybe 10 US or something. But we went in, met with this like detective, and said, "I lost my passport. This is how." And the guy, and then he had me put the money on in my new temporary passport, like sticking out a little bit, and set it on the desk when the guy went out for a second. And the guy came in, looked at my passport, saw the money, put it in his pocket, and I got my police report.
No,
and
you needed.
Yeah,
I would not know how to do that.
Yeah, it was very, very. And he like said, "How much money do you have?" I said, "Well, like I don't know, like how much? What do I give him? $100,000? Like I have no idea." And he goes, "Well, what do you have?" And he goes, "No, give him that." And he folded it in such a way and put it in. It was very obvious that it's a common
It wasn't
thing
his
in
first
that part
rodeo.
of the in that part of the world. And then I got my police report, which was stamped. I think I still have it somewhere. And when I went to the airport, and they're like, "You don't have a pass," I showed them that, and they actually let me in, but they had to call a supervisor over, and I was at the airport like, "Oh my God, they're going to interrogate me. I'm going to miss my flight." It's like, so I'm so unbelievably paranoid with my passport.
I think that's a pretty good thing to be, though.
Yeah. So that's and then the best part of the story is when I left, when he dropped me back off at the hotel, he opened up his trunk and he gave me some sausage. And he gave me like three big sausages. And then he was on his way to go sell more of them. Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
What a guy. These people you meet along the way who just, for no reason, are so kind.
Yeah, so kind and want to slip me their sausage.
That's a little more commonplace. But I lost my wallet. That was pretty annoying. I was on the back of a motorbike in Kathmandu. And, got to the hotel, realised my wallet was gone. And then obviously, Nepalese people on the whole are wonderful, but you're kind of concerned that it ends up in the wrong hands, and there's credit cards and driving licenses. So, and it was late in the afternoon, which was bad timing. I basically spent the entire night cancelling every card I could ever think of. It's amazing when you get home how much that racks up, because you get back and you've got to pay to replace your driving license. You got to pay to replace your health card. You got to pay to replace your bank card, and your credit card, and all this stuff. And then you got to log in to. I couldn't remember my credit card number, obviously. So then you can't log in to all your details. It was a nightmare replacing it all. So
Well, and there's a reason why Europeans and Asian men tend to carry little crossbodies, especially when they travel. And the reason is they can keep all their stuff in there. They don't have to worry about being pickpocketed. They have it right next to them. They don't have to worry about it falling out of their pocket. And where Americans tend to have a wallet in their back pocket traveling, and it falls out and they lose it. You don't really see that with like the French or or the Chinese. Like and Americans will be like, oh, they have a little man purse, but there's a reason why they have that stuff. And I tend to travel now with that stuff because I've lost things and had things stolen, and I want all my stuff right there where I can hold on to it, and I know it's there and it's not in my pocket.
You lost a phone as well, didn't you? Did you have a phone stolen?
I had a phone stolen in Ethiopia, and that was horrible. Like, not to diminish your wallet, but you start thinking about how much is in your phone when you're traveling, like your tickets home, your contact with loved ones, pictures, the way to buy things, email, all that stuff. And it's like your phone's gone. How do you even check in for your flight? How do you get your tickets to the flight? How do you even let anybody in your life know you're okay? Because do you even know like people's phone numbers off the top of your head anymore? Like, I know my mom's because she's had the same phone for a million years, but I don't know anybody else's phone number. I just hit like Charlie Bosco when I want to talk to you or when I want to text you. I couldn't tell you your number. I have no idea. So it was horrible, and I was basically, again, stupid. And I checked in my hotel, and I thought, I'm gonna go walk around the Capitol a little bit. Like, I'm tired of being on the plane. And this is again before I wore a crossbody, before I wore a little bag, and I had my phone in my front pocket, and I didn't bring my wallet because I was smart, but I had my phone because I thought I might take some pictures, and I had my phone in my pocket, and a guy comes up to me on the street speaking perfect English. Another lesson: if someone speaks perfect English and they approach you on the street, they probably learn English for a reason. It's not to help you.
That's a good lesson.
So he comes up speaking English, and he starts asking about my tattoos, which happens to me. And I start talking to him, and he's kind of a young, good-looking guy. And he then says, oh, let me look at your tattoos. He grabs my arm and starts looking at my tattoos. Well, then all of a sudden he grabs it super hard and starts shaking it. And I like pull away. I'm like, get off of me. What are you doing? And I walk about a block. I reach down, my phone's gone. And what had happened was he had accomplished, and while he was distracting me pulling on my arm, somebody reached their hand in my pocket and took my phone, and I never even felt it. And I found a traffic cop who just did not care one bit, and that was the end of it. And I lost my phone, and I had to get in my email on like the hotel like concierge computer to like email people that I was okay. And then on top of that, you realize like your phone's half your entertainment. It's like at night you're watching movies on it. When you travel, you're texting your friends or you're doing whatever. Without it, it was awful. It was an awful experience. And now I'm unbelievably paranoid about my phone. And if I always have it in like a little bag or in my hand. And every time I get out of an Uber, I'm like, check the seat. If someone's with me, I'm like, do you have your phone? Do you have your sunglasses? Because I've left sunglasses in Ubers. You can easily leave things in Ubers. You can set something on the seat, and your hat or whatever, or your sunglasses, you get out and it's gone. I'm just so unbelievably paranoid about losing stuff.
I think that's a good way to be. I think that's a very sensible way to be, because it's very easy to lose stuff, and it can cause you an awful lot of problems. Do you have any more? Do you have any more topics you think we should cover?
I actually think we should do a part 2 of this sometime. Maybe we do like I said, a Halloween horror stories of travel Halloween special. but I'm sure we can both think of more. But those are some of the ones that I had that I learned big lessons from.
Yeah, and my abiding memory of whether it's losing something or a border crossing where you feel like it's going wrong, or being on a plane when the engine blows up, is that feeling of vulnerability and helplessness. It's horrible, and I really, really just want to do anything to avoid that.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I really feel a little bit uncomfortable now. all this.
Yeah, I actually do too. I'm like keep looking at my phone like I want to hold on to it, and I've got a trip coming up this weekend, and I'm just thinking, I bet I just do not want to lose my phone. Like, it is awful, 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 awful. Awful.
Well, we're sitting here in my little studio at home, and my passport lives in here, and I'm actually going to check it's in here.
Yeah. I would too. I would imagine eventually, at least in our kids' lives, passports will be mostly a thing of the past, and it'll be some sort of like retinal scan, and you just go up and you scan your retina, and they move you through, and you don't. I mean, even though it's kind of romantic having a passport with stamps in it, it's just we're at the point in technology. I just think it's stupid.
I agree. It's kind of ridiculous that you still have to have this piece of paper, which is effectively all
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, when we go in the States, I have to thumbprint, fingerprint, retina scan. So they already have all that information anyway. They can, especially in America, they could identify me in a second.
Oh yeah. When I have global entry in the United States, and I don't even have to show my passport when I come in. I just walk full speed through this camera, and then they say welcome, TT. You know, when I walk in and I'm in. Like, and if they already have that technology, why do I need it in the first place?
You know, a friend of mine, his dad travelled back in the 50s and 60s when foreign travel wasn't that common. And back in the day, you could just show the outside of your British passport when walking through an airport.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. How cool is that?
When I remember as a kid going to Canada with my dad, because my dad was from Seattle, and you didn't need any ID or passport or anything. As a kid, like my dad would show his driver's license, I think, and I did nothing because I was a kid, and they would just have you get in, and there was no border patrol at all, or border control.
There certainly is now, but you can get that
Yeah.
Nexus. I'm going to get the Nexus card when I become a Canadian citizen. So, and then it's they do all the enhanced checks beforehand, and then basically at the border you go straight through. So.
Well, if Canada wasn't bringing fentanyl into the United States all the time, then we wouldn't have this problem.
I feel like Canada's been the source of most of your problems, really. We're destroying you economically. We're providing all the fentanyl. Yeah, so I can only apologise, but yeah, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy than Trump. Hopefully he's going to fix the trade war begun by him.
Yes. Yeah, but you know, there's a management philosophy, and which is create a problem and fix it, and then look like the hero.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately that stuff works. Like, and he's doing it, and people are falling for it, but I don't know.
All right, hold on. This just isn't making my existential crisis any better. I'm stressed about everything now, big and small. But that was fun. We should, let's go back to being positive and leaving the podcast feeling good next week, though, because it's too stressful.
Oh, that sounds great.